I, for one, think that the Toy Taker was a perfect choice of avatar for Vivsipop's most notorious stalker, as both are incredibly disappointing antagonists. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the Island of Misfit Toys is a 2001 CGI animated movie presented as a sequel to the classic stop-motion special Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Last year I talked about Rudolph's character arc, one of the few aspects where it shines, and if you've ever seen it, you could even say it glows. This year, I'd like to flip the script by talking about a weaker character, the antagonistic Toy Taker. After a summary of his role, I'll discuss why he falls flat, compare him to two remarkably similar villains who succeed where he fails, and outline some changes to make him a more engaging character. The movie opens on a scene of the globe-trotting menace abducting toys in the dead of night by hypnotizing them with his flute. Despite making headlines at the North Pole, no concrete action is taken against him until Santa assigns 2 toy soldiers to guard his warehouse. That night, the Toy Taker strikes it, stealing every last toy there, including the toys guarding the toys. Meanwhile, on their way back from performing a root canal with no anesthesia, Rudolph and Hermie get shipwrecked at Castaway Cove during a storm. There, they meet its ruler, the fabulous plastic surgeon hippopotamus fairy Queen Camilla. Despite at first mistaking the pair for agents of the Toy Taker and trying to have them arrested, her staff repair the mobile dental office our heroes were traveling in. They make it back to Christmas Town just in time for Rudolph to give Clarice flying lessons, during which they confess their feelings to each other and the latter earns her wings. Unfortunately, the joy of the moment is cut short by Santa announcing the theft in his warehouse. With only 3 days left until Christmas Eve, Rudolph rallies an effort to get the toys back in time. Following a report from an elf of a blimp flying around the night before, everyone goes to the warehouse to look for clues about the Toy Taker. There they find nothing but empty shelves, discontinued toy stuffing, and a line of small footprints. While our heroes try to figure out where to look for him next, the Toy Taker takes some toys to a hollowed-out iceberg. There, he states that he's saving them from their ultimate fate of being disowned by the children who love them. When Charlie in the Box and the Dolly for Sue push back, highlighting how much being saved from the Island of Misfit Toys meant to them, he doubles down on the nobility of his mission in song and leaves without elaborating. Rudolph and company travel to Castaway Cove, only to find that the Toy Taker has already ransacked it. They then head to the Island of Misfit Toys, where they believe he'll strike next. There, with King Moonracer's blessing, they carry out their operation to stop the Toy Taker, infiltrate the blimp by disguising themselves as toys. Unfortunately, they are outed once on board, leading to a chase sequence that damages the blimp. Jumping off of it, the Toy Taker disappears into the peppermint vine, where our heroes give chase and finally apprehend the thief. Once in Santa's custody, we learn that the Toy Taker is actually a decaying teddy bear on stilts named Mr. Cuddles. With his entire operation foiled, he shares his backstory. His life began as a Christmas gift to a young boy named Stephen, who loved him dearly and played with him daily. As Stephen grew up, however, he played with Mr. Cuddles less and less, moving him from the bed to a chair and then to a closet. One day, several years later, Mr. Cuddles was accidentally discarded, ending up in a landfill. Humiliated and traumatized, he became the Toy Taker in a bid to save his fellow toys from this fate. Afterwards, Santa confirms to Mr. Cuddles that Stephen has actually been looking for him all this time, intending to save him as a family heirloom. Once all the stolen toys had been returned, Queen Camilla repairs him, and Santa gives him to the daughter of the adult Stephen as a Christmas gift. One would think that a disowned teddy bear that flies around the world and abducts other toys to spare them from his trauma would make for a captivating Yuletide antagonist. While the idea is sound, I see 3 major shortcomings with how the story of the Toy Taker is told. The first is that, while we see the Toy Taker succeed in abducting toys, we don't get a demonstration of how dangerous he actually is, as he's never shown overcoming a major obstacle. We see this when reviewing his 4 heists in the movie. First, during the opening sequence, the most he had to do was play his flute on the rooftop of the house he was stealing from, and the toys simply walked to him to be passively sucked up into his airship. Nobody tried to stop him. Next, we find that Santa's warehouse was not properly secured against the Toy Taker, which even Santa himself admits.
I should have guarded the toys myself.
The entry is as easy as opening 2 skylight panels, and was done non-destructively. More critically, the only guards we see are 2 toy soldiers posted outside the front door. They are thematically appropriate, and there may have been more inside, but they are all weak to the toy taker's hypnotic flute. By contrast, we know nothing of the heist at Castaway Cove. Queen Camilla has several guards who are armed with swords and are probably not toys. They are the closest the toy taker could have faced to an organized security system by that point, yet we never see him contend with them. Finally, the Island of Misfit Toys was deliberately left unsecured to allow Rudolph, Clarice, Hermie, and Yukon to infiltrate the airship. Once they were outed, the toy taker went on the run, and all his efforts to slow the heroes, namely opening a trapdoor in the blimp, throwing lamps at Rudolph and Clarice, and diverting them onto another track, failed. In total, we only see the toy taker succeed when not faced with a competent security system. Never once does he pull off his mission in spite of a major obstacle. On the contrary, the one time he faced a competent challenge, he stayed on the defensive and then lost everything but the memories of his fall from grace. Based on the text of the movie then, how can we assume that he's a meaningful threat? Was he so successful because he's competent, or because nobody really tried hard enough to stop him? If it's the latter, then is Rudolph and company's triumph over him really that impressive, or was his downfall just a matter of time? Speaking of his downfall, the second major problem with the toy taker's presentation is that his identity and full motivations are revealed too late, being confirmed 61 minutes into the 75-minute runtime. While his mission to spare his fellow toys from being discarded is sympathetic, the delay in learning anything about his backstory robs him of opportunities to be a truly complex villain, both to the audience and other characters. The crux of this is that nobody on either side of the screen is forced to confront the fact that he's a discarded toy before his defeat. Without that context, he's just presented as an ontological villain, stealing toys and smugly fancying himself a principled hero. Thus, the conflict between Rudolph and the toy taker is wrongly framed as a simple battle of good versus evil instead of its true nature as a conflict between two sympathetic parties. By the time we have any reason to empathize with the toy taker, the movie is almost over, and all opportunities for dramatic irony, that is, the audience knowing things that the characters don't, have been squandered. Adding to this is the fact that we have no reason to take the toy taker seriously when he addresses the toys in the hollowed-out iceberg, which is the only time prior to his final raid where he talks with another character. For all his insistence that a toy's fate is to be discarded and that he provides the only way out, he never once provides any proof or testimony. Instead, he is challenged by multiple toys and never gives them a solid reason to think that they're better with him than with the children who love them dearly. While a few toys eventually see his true form, there's not enough time for them to actually think about his philosophy because his story is about to end. And the way his story ends is the last problem. Immediately forgiven, he's repaired and delivered to Stephen's daughter, and never does anything in exchange except return the stolen toys, which also we never see for ourselves. In essence, he gets away with his crimes. His entire mission entailed traveling around the world to abduct toys, hypnotizing them and separating them from the children who love them against their will. Never once does he convince them to leave of their own volition, instead depriving them of their entire way of life without their consent. Even after being confronted and challenged by other toys, Mr. Cuddles never shows any signs of remorse, reflection, or growth. He never so much as entertains the possibility that he's in the wrong, both in disguise and out of it.
But why would a teddy bear steal toys?
Not steal, Rudolph. Rescue.
And despite his rather obvious crimes, he is never held to account. He is never punished or rehabilitated, never asked to repent, and never even volunteers to do more than the bare minimum of setting his captives free. He doesn't even apologize to Santa, Queen Camilla, or any of the toys he ripped from the children they cherish. Instead of facing some kind of justice, or doing anything to make amends for his global crime spree, he gets exactly what he wants with no extra effort on his end. Indeed, it is tantamount to a reward. You might answer this point by saying that Christmastown is a place of compassion and goodwill towards man, in line with the holiday spirit. Firstly, no it's fucking not! Rudolph's plotlines in the 1964 and 2001 specials hinge on the entire town not respecting him as an equal. I literally discussed this last year! There is no second point to refute this, nor is there a need for one. So far, we've seen the ways in which the toy taker fails to be the captivating villain he could be. To see him done right, I found two more engaging antagonists with similar backstories and/or motivations. Lotso Hug and Bear from Toy Story 3, and Kuvira from The Legend of Korra. I'll compare their backgrounds to that of the toy taker before describing how they captivate the audience in the ways that the toy taker doesn't. Lotso, like Mr. Cuddles, is a teddy bear whose owner, Daisy, received him for Christmas and loved him dearly before accidentally being separated from him. Whereas Mr. Cuddles was thrown away, Lotso was abandoned with two fellow toys, a baby doll named Big Baby and a clown named Chuckles, during a road trip. What broke him was making his way back to Daisy's house only to find that he had been replaced with another bear of the same model. Much like Mr. Cuddles, he coped with the trauma of thinking he had been disowned by believing that the child-toy relationship was a false one and that a toy's fate was to be thrown away. Unlike the toy taker, however, Lotso has no illusions of being a liberator. After learning that he had been replaced, he, Big Baby, and Chuckles hitchhiked to Sunnyside Daycare. Meeting other toys who had also been donated and disowned, he quickly established a cult of personality around himself and his nihilistic view of a toy's life cycle. While the toy taker only ever directly controlled other toys while abducting them, with the spell wearing off and never being reapplied, Lotso maintained control through a network of enforcers and security guards, Big Baby as his right hand. His preferred punishment was condemning toys to be played with by the toddlers in the caterpillar room, who, unlike the older kids in the butterfly room, regularly abused and broke the toys they played with. It is through this tightly run police state that we see Lotso do the first thing that the toy taker never managed: thwart serious attempts to oppose him. Several toys are seen trying to escape, only to be caught by the numerous layers of security Lotso had set up. More sinister is Lotso's ability to turn allies against each other, as he does to Andy's toys. When they first arrive at Sunnyside, where they go after falsely thinking that they were going to be discarded, they are subjected to a brutal play session in the caterpillar room. In response, Buzz Lightyear ventures out to address Lotso about the situation. While his own request to be moved into the butterfly room is granted, Lotso insists that the other toys stay behind to give the toddlers someone to play with. The moment Buzz pushes back, Lotso orders his inner circle of enforcers to hold him down and brainwash him by switching him to demo mode. Following this, he'd act as a prison guard against his former friends, even having Mr. Potato Head sent to solitary confinement for speaking out. These incidents show how Lotso meets challenges to his will, with force, with prejudice, and with success. Escape attempts and dissent are proof that life under Lotso is miserable and wrought with fear, and are rooted in a belief that a better way is possible. As we see later, it can be rather easy to undermine the dictatorial teddy bear, making any challenge a potential threat to his order. The fact that he overcomes them and makes escape so difficult proves how impressive it is that our heroes pull it off. Oh, spoiler alert, the good guys win. Compare that to the toy taker, who never even faces a competent threat to his mission until the protagonists defeat him, giving us no reference point for how difficult that truly was. But even long before we see any of Lotso's villainy, we have already learned an important detail about his backstory. He, like many of the other toys at Sunnyside, was disowned. He admits it outright to Andy's toys in an attempt to sympathize with them and convince them that a better life can await them.
Poor baby. We were thrown out together, me and him, abandoned by the same owner.
This happens about 24 minutes into the 102-minute movie, or after about a quarter of the runtime has elapsed, and it allows us to watch the remaining 3 quarters while ruminating on this piece of his tragic past. And his past, regardless of what he made of it, is tragic, as we learn from Chuckles. Shortly before the first playtime in the caterpillar room, Woody, the series' protagonist, escapes Sunnyside to rejoin Andy as he prepares to go to college. His plan then hits a snag, pun decidedly intended, on a tree branch, and he's rescued by Bonnie, one of the kids at the daycare. Bonnie takes him home, where he meets Chuckles, who Bonnie saved after he was damaged. Having seen Lotso's descent into darkness, he shares the full story with Woody, and by extension the audience, in a scene about 49 minutes in, just short of the halfway point. This piecemeal reveal of Lotso's backstory during the first half of the movie builds intrigue and complicates the audience's relationship with the character better than revealing the full truth at once, especially if said reveal was at the end. Throughout the earliest scenes, we see Lotso to be kind, encouraging, and sympathetic. It is only during the scene where he brainwashes Buzz where we start to ask ourselves, what went wrong? Chuckles quickly provides the answer, and we watch the back half of the movie with perhaps contradictory feelings, at once sympathizing with his past while condemning his present and wishing for a fairer future. By contrast, the toy taker's true identity as Mr. Cuddles, while hinted at with occasional shedding of stuffing, isn't revealed until 61 minutes into his film. Even including credits, 80% of the runtime has elapsed before anyone learns anything concrete about his backstory, giving the characters and audience no time to meaningfully grapple with it. Without knowing the truth in advance, he can't act as a complex villain before he's repaired and given exactly what he wanted without consequence. Unlike the toy taker, however, Lotso gets his comeuppance. It starts during our hero's harrowing attempt to leave through a garbage chute. With only the dumpster standing in the way of freedom, they are met by Lotso, whose enforcers interrogated the toy phone who helped Woody plan the escape. Lotso rants about how a toy's fate is to be discarded and a child's love for their toys is a lie. Woody counters by showing the name tag Daisy gave to Big Baby as proof of how meaningful the child-toy relationship is. Lotso angrily destroys it and lashes out at Big Baby, who throws him into the dumpster in retaliation. Both Lotso and the toy taker lost everything they had spent years building, yet there are two key differences between their fates. The first is that while the toy taker fell because his opponents got the better of him, Lotso's undoing was his own. Yes, it was Woody who presented the name tag and Ken who first defected, but it was Lotso who made the unforced error of lashing out at his right hand. Instead of meaningfully confronting his trauma, or simply discarding the name tag and continuing to gaslight Big Baby, he turned his oldest ally against him and paid the price. Lotso being his own undoing continues as he drags Woody into the dumpster with him, and his friends dive in after. Seconds later, a garbage truck collects them, taking them to the dump. They struggle to escape, with Lotso saving himself by climbing a ladder, leaving the others to be saved from the incinerator by a crane claw. Despite his proven villainy, at no point do any of Andy's toys try to undermine him. On the contrary, Woody and Buzz save him from a shredder. However, Woody and company are unwilling to help him again after he leaves them for dead. Lost and alone, Lotso is picked up by a garbage man who had the same kind of teddy bear himself when he was young. Feeling nostalgic, the garbage man ties into the grill of his truck for decoration. And here, we see the second critical difference between Lotso and the toy taker, their final fates. For being ungrateful and unrepentant, Lotso is condemned to spend the rest of his days in utter humiliation as a grill ornament on a garbage truck. For being caught and doing absolutely nothing to repent besides free the toys he abducted, the toy taker gets away scot-free. All in all, we see that despite having a similar background as an accidentally disowned teddy bear that turned their trauma into villainy, Lotso is a compelling character in the ways that the toy taker isn't, including more outside the scope of this video. Lotso is, point for point, more like the toy taker in background than in self-perception. However, we find in Kuvira, the cunning dictator of the Earth Empire, someone who is so unlike him on the surface, yet sees herself in a strikingly similar way. Like the toy taker in Lotso, Kuvira was abandoned, but unlike them, her abandonment was deliberate. Finding her too difficult to raise, her parents abandoned her at the gates of the metal-bending city of Zaofu. Suyin Beifong, the city's founder and matriarch, took her in as a protege, eventually raising her as a daughter. The way in which Kuvira's abandonment shaped her future as an antagonist shares similarities with what Lotso and the toy taker made of theirs. Like the toy taker, she funneled her trauma into doing what she believed to be best for her people. But, more in line with Lotso, that thing ended up being a terrifying military dictatorship that rewarded loyalty with comfort and punished defiance with prejudice. Even setting aside her mighty army and their long string of victories, Kuvira further enthralls the audience by proving herself perfectly capable of putting down opposition, something the toy taker never does. 3 particular fight scenes throughout Book 4 show us how much of a threat she can be, even by herself. In After All These Years, the first episode, her train is ambushed by a company of roving bandits who block the tracks. Kuvira faces all of them personally, stomping them in a 1-against-20 beatdown that would make Mehdi Hassan blush. As an aside, she might as well go unsurrounded. Nickelodeon clearly doesn't want her, and we all know how happy Jubilee Media is to platform fashion. 5 episodes later, in the Battle of Zaofu, Kuvira returns to the city she once called home, this time as a conqueror. Korra, who, as Avatar, is supposed to maintain balance in the world, pleads with her to stand down after Suyin broke an earlier armistice, only to be challenged to a duel for the fate of the Metal City. Despite Korra's best efforts, Kuvira utterly crushes her, albeit with the help of the former's trauma from her Pyrrhic victory against Zahir. 4 more episodes pass until we see Kuvira stand up to an opponent again in Operation Beifong. This episode sees Kuvira testing her super weapon on an empty town near a factory and camp where Suyin, her husband, and 3 of her sons are being held prisoner. 4 powerful benders team up to save them. Opal, Suyin's daughter and the only airbender in the family. Bolin, Opal's boyfriend who used to work for Kuvira. Lin, Suyin's older sister and chief of police in Republic City. And Toph Beifong, the greatest earthbender in the world. Don't you thunderheads ever forget it! After breaking the rest of the Beifongs out of prison, they crash the weapon test, engaging Kuvira and her soldiers in open combat. Even though Kuvira takes a few hits and ultimately fails to stop her adversaries from escaping, at no point is she on the back foot. On the contrary, she holds her own against Su-Yin as they fight one-on-one. This last feat is especially impressive since Su-Yin is not only one of the best metal benders in the world, but also Kuvira's mentor and adoptive mother. Both before and after this moment, we get glimpses into how Kuvira built towards besting her master. Firstly, we see Kuvira as a minor ally in Book 3, prompting us to ask exactly what happened when she's revealed to be the antagonist of Book 4. We get our first concrete answer in Enemy at the Gates, the 5th of 13 episodes in Book 4. The night before the duel for Zaofu, Su-Yin tells Korra that she adopted Kuvira at the age of 8, training her to become the powerful bender and brilliant leader she is today. However, their relationship declined after the assassination of the Earth Queen in civil war in the Earth Kingdom 3 years earlier. With the Avatar unavailable, the world leaders turned to Su-Yin to restore order. However, she declined, principally opposed to imposing her will on others. This inspired Kuvira, troubled by the ongoing strife in her country and eager to share Zaofu's modernity, to do so herself, quickly stabilizing the famous walled capital of Ba Sing Se. We don't learn anything else about Kuvira's backstory until right before her downfall in The Last Stand, the final episode of Book 4 and of the show as a whole. A powerful shot from Kuvira's superweapon ripped open a new portal to the spirit world in downtown Republic City, blasting both her and Korra in. In the ensuing moment of peace, the two adversaries opened up to each other, with Kuvira revealing that her parents abandoned her at her weakest, and tearfully admitting her desperation to stop the same thing from happening to her nation. I will grant that this is the way in which Kuvira struggles the most to be a more compelling villain than the Toy Taker, as by the time we learn how her trauma shaped her path to conquest, the struggle against her is all but over. This is similar to how the Toy Taker's trauma, the driving force of his subterfuge, is only revealed at the end of his movie. But when comparing this aspect of the storytelling for these two characters, I still give the edge to Kuvira thanks to Su-Yin's account of their relationship from Enemy at the Gates. It allows us to watch the next 8 episodes, including some of Kuvira's triumphs, knowing that something had gone wrong between her genuinely yearning to bring peace to her homeland and becoming a brutal dictator, while also wondering if something more fundamental was at play. For what it's worth, the 8th episode of Book 4 was supposed to cover Kuvira's backstory in greater detail, but it was turned into a low-budget clip show when a Nickelodeon executive woke up and chose violence, specifically against the show's already strained budget. As such, like the Toy Taker, the first mention of her abandonment issues was relegated to right before her downfall. Said downfall is an unconditional surrender after Korra helps her back through the spirit portal. Moved by the Avatar's power and compassion, she orders her army to stand down before being led away in handcuffs, apologizing directly to Su-Yin for bringing anguish to her family. This alone is far beyond what the Toy Taker, or Lotso for that matter, did once their reigns of terror ended, but Kuvira went even further in both redemption and consequences in Ruins of the Empire, the second trilogy of graphic novels set after the end of The Legend of Korra. These books, which include a closer look at Kuvira's backstory cut from the show, detail the rise and fall of an Earth Empire holdout attempting to regain control. Under Korra's supervision, she proves instrumental in stopping the new commander, both through trying to talk him out of his actions and then defeating him in battle. Still, not even this restores her life to how it was before her conquest. The first thing she loses is her relationship to Batar Jr., a scientist and Su-Yin's eldest son, which we do not have time to unpack in the context of Su-Yin and Kuvira's mother-daughter dynamic. Dating for years before her rise to power, and later betrothed to each other, Batar Jr. broke up with Kuvira over an incident during her final attack on Republic City, where she tried to sacrifice him when Team Avatar took him hostage. She also loses her freedom of movement, standing trial and even pleading guilty before being sentenced to house arrest at the Beifong estate in Zaofu. Nevertheless, she takes these in stride in an honest effort to repent. Despite once believing that the ends justified her means, Kuvira realized the error of her ways and did whatever she could, from a heartfelt apology to putting herself in harm's way, to actually do what was right. Her reward was a stained record and return to a lesser life than what she had before her rise to power. Mr. Cuddles simply returning the toys he abducted pales in comparison to the redemption Kuvira worked for, especially considering that his reward was a new lease on life under the care of Stephen's daughter. Yes, the former acted with far greater violence, but both of them uprooted countless lives out of a trauma-fueled savior complex. Only one of them, however, earned their return to normalcy. So far, we've discussed how the Toy Taker fails to be a compelling antagonist through not demonstrating his potential, not revealing his background until too late, and not enduring any meaningful consequences for his crimes. Having seen how similar antagonists succeed in these ways, the next question is, How would I make him both more threatening and more sympathetic like Lotso and Kuvira? Firstly, I would have him demonstrate his true prowess as a thief by having him thwart an active security system. The best opportunity for this is showing his heist at Castaway Cove because it is the hardest of all his known targets. Not only is it guarded, it is also a cavern buried beneath ice and snow, limiting his escape options. Stealth and hypnosis are his bread and butter, but I imagine a large movement of toys would alert the guards. That's when he commits his most devious act yet. Turn the hypnotized toys into a personal army. There doesn't even have to be any actual combat, as he can give Queen Camilla an ultimatum. Let him escape with the toys all unharmed, or force her men to fight them. Fighting risks damaging the toys, which is the opposite of what both Queen Camilla, who repairs them, and the toy taker, who seeks to liberate them, want. Forced between two unfabulous options, she reluctantly lets them walk away for the sake of leaving them more beautiful than she found them. This scene would reveal how adept of a thief the toy taker actually is. In light of his global crime spree, which Queen Camilla knows about, it makes sense for her guards to be on high alert. Managing to get around them anyway would show him to be a master of stealth, at least more than we see in the actual movie. Furthermore, the negotiation would show his ability to gain leverage over his opponent and get out of trouble. Hand-to-hand combat like Kuvira isn't an option because he's an old teddy bear on stilts, weak from years of neglect and decay, so he has to either negotiate his way out or flee and risk abandoning his mission. If he successfully negotiates, he proves that he knows his opponent well enough and is cunning enough to use their desires against them. It would show what a threat he actually can be by overcoming a challenge to his goal of stealing toys. Moreover, such a victory shows that he can thwart an opponent without resorting to violence. This would lend more weight to the claim he makes to the toys in the hollowed-out iceberg that his modus operandi is influenced by Gandhi. Incidentally, this scene provides the best opportunity to reveal the toy taker's identity before the climax, following the partial reveal modeled by Lotso. In the original, he fails to give the toys a reason to believe him, but if he shows that he's a discarded teddy bear, his ideas gain credence with both the toys and the audience. Even those who disagree with his actions would have time to understand where he's coming from in advance of at least one of his heists. The best way to do so would be in response to another toy, likely Charlie in the Box, objecting to his motivations. I imagine the scene would go like this.
Charlie in the Box. Think of how lonely life must be when a child stops needing you. But I'll always take care of you. Wait a minute! You're just spouting lies to scare us into following you. Then riddle me this, Charles. If you're destined to be loved forever, how did you end up on the Island of Misfit Toys? That doesn't matter! Where's your proof it'll happen again? How do you know we'll get thrown away? Where's my proof? How do I know? Because it happened to me! And it'll happen to you! And you! And especially you! My apologies. I let my memories get the better of me. You see, this is exactly what I'm trying to save you from. I promise you, this is for your own good. But if you still wish to go home and face the same humiliating end that I did, then go. Let your love for your child carry you across the frigid ocean. He lost sight of what truly mattered, didn't he?
I think it's important to have the toy taker apologize for his outburst as a sign of his good intentions, which he could then show even more of after he is captured at the end of the movie. This brings me to the change I'd make to his life after that point. Since no one in Christmas Town seems hungry for revenge, and the toy taker's goals are more in line with Kuvira's desire to stabilize the Earth Kingdom than Lotso's selfish and cynical lust for power, I think it would make the most sense to have Mr. Cuddles redeem himself. It starts when Santa reveals to the forlorn teddy bear that, while Steven never meant to throw him away and searched for him, he eventually gave up and accepted the loss. This leaves Mr. Cuddles devastated and unsure of what to make of his life. While he ponders his situation, he gets repaired at Castaway Cove. Moved by Queen Camilla's generosity and forgiveness and impressed with his total overhaul, he finds his calling: to travel around the world and save discarded toys, bringing them to Castaway Cove for repairs and then passing them on to Santa so he can give them new homes. In this way, he repays his debt to those he wronged by becoming a part of the toy life cycle, all while getting to do what he always wanted, saving toys from the same fate he suffered. As a bonus, We can extend this with a bittersweet finale to the story of Mr. Cuddles. 60 years after he changed his ways, his fabric is falling apart, and despite Queen Camilla's best efforts, he is beyond repair. That Christmas Eve, as thanks for his decades of service, Santa delivers him to an elderly and dying Stephen, letting the old friends spend one last Christmas together. To recap, I've covered 3 major problems that stop the toy taker from living up to his concept as an antagonist: a lack of notable challenges, the late reveal of his identity, and the lack of consequences for his crimes. I also compared him to 2 other animated antagonists, Lotso from Toy Story 3 and Kuvira from The Legend of Korra, who have similar backgrounds and goals but manage to be far more compelling characters, especially in the ways that the toy taker was not. Finally, I outlined fixes to each of his narrative shortcomings. Let's not pretend that the toy taker is the sole weakness of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and the Island of Misfit Toys, nor that implementing my changes would make this movie a masterpiece. But let's not pretend that it's inherently broken. Rudolph vs. the Toy Thief is a simple yet solid foundation for a Christmas story, especially if it interplays with both Rudolph's struggles to accept his nose and the toy taker's meaningful threat. That, combined with good animation and a better soundtrack, would make it both a classic in its own right and a worthy sequel to the famous stop-motion special. It makes me wonder if any of the other characters in these specials can teach us something. In the meantime, I've been Ornifnuff, wishing you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. And we all know how happy Jubilee Media is to platform fashion designers. Or is it Nazis? Oh yeah, it's Nazis.